Hey guys, it's Wednesday afternoon, a little bit after 1 o'clock, the 16th, I believe. Let me double check. I said it once already today, so I should know, you would think. 16th of August, just to be sure that we know the date, that we all know the date. Um, and I'm going to stick with my promise. I'm going to try to keep the conversation 30 minutes, 40 minutes tops, unless a few people pop on and for whatever reason the conversation goes on. Usually that happens when we talk about training, diet, stuff along those lines. Um, but we'll see. I'd like to keep it streamlined. We don't come into any talk with any topic in mind, without any theme to talk of. Sort of let it develop as we go. Of course, I always bring it to yoga. I always bring it to meditation. I always bring it to breath work along those lines. Um, those are the things, along with nature, the environment, writing, that um, I have a passion for, that I've based my life around. I base my life on writing. It's one of the first things I do every morning. I'm out of bed. I prepare for yoga. Oh, I'm sorry. I prepare to meditate, and I meditate. Then I do my yoga practice as my coffee is brewing, and then I sit down and write for a while. After I write, or at least I get the general theme of what I want written, I go outside. I take my first walk for the day before sunrise. As I mentioned quite a bit, you want to get that early light, first light hitting the eyes, early as possible. The things it does to your body is absolutely amazing. Now, of course, you don't have to get up before dawn and get out before sunrise. I recommend it because it's a completely different world. Nature is either waking or preparing to slumber for the day. It's almost as if two worlds are intermixed. Um, as Rumi said, the secret's going back and forth between that door sill. So when that light hits the eyes, though, even if it's 9 o'clock in the morning, excuse me, you are hitting, you're causing a hormonal reaction in the body, a chemical reaction. Your body is producing I'm drawing a blank. Body is producing cortisol, which we always liken to a stress hormone, which it is. However, our body responds well to stress when we need stress, when we're prepared for stress. Cortisol is a natural function, a natural hormone for the body, and we need it. It prepares us for the day, gets us ready to act. However, it's when cortisol runs amok. That's when we have issues. When we enter that fight or flight and we don't have a third option, which is to relax or to respond, take a breath. When fight or flight are our only options, what do we have left? Got to find something else. That's where breath work comes in. That's where meditation comes in. That's where even getting up in the morning, being out in nature, just has a calming effect on us. So even with that production of cortisol happening in the morning, it's more even killed. We become more responsive for the day. The amazing thing is that those hormones, those wake-up hormones, die off through the course of the day, and in their remains, from their waste material actually, our body creates serotonin as well as melatonin. All the stuff that helps us relax, all the stuff that prepares us for sleep later in the day. So the first things you do in the morning not only sets the course for the day, meditation, breath work, getting out in nature, yoga, but it also prepares you for that night's sleep. Everything works seamlessly when we allow it, when we work towards that end objective in mind. And the end objective should always be what helps us, what serves us. In that way, we are better suited to serve each other. I can't be of any help to you if I'm always reactive, everything. If I'm always ready to jump, if I'm always stressed out, if I'm always ready to leap on every little thing as if it was a life or death situation, as if I'm going to fight or flight, I'm useless to myself and to you. I'm reading, it's a book that I read. I was in my early teens, and it was, good morning, Lewis. How are you? Yeah, I think the book came out in 83, so I must have been 15, 16 when I read it. Cry of the Panther. And it's a true story. Vietnam vet, Marine combat. Came back from Vietnam, completely shattered, wounded, physically wounded, but emotionally scarred, as so many vets are. And his way of healing was spending time in the Everglades. And this is during the time he wrote it in the early 80s, but it took place coming back from Vietnam in the early 70s. Florida was a different place back then. And the Florida panther was probably down to 20 or 30 left total. Of last that I've read, the population has increased to 270, fortunately. They were on the brink there. Could have gone either way. He had a passion. After being in the Marines, being in Vietnam, having his fill of killing, always being in that fight or flight stage, always. What that kind of stress, and that's true stress, what that kind of stress did to his body and did to his mind, it's just incredible that he recovered. And the only way he could recover was out in the swamp. And he lived for something larger than himself. He needed, and needed is the operative word because he knew that was the only way he would be saved, was to study the Florida panther. Only 20 left. He spent days, he spent hours upon hour upon hour upon hour out there in the swamp, stalking, learning how to live as a swamp creature, literally. So he'd just catch a glimpse. And after catching a glimpse, that he could actually start spending some time with them. Wonderful book. Anyway, he talked about in the Marines of Vietnam, he was trained to, after that initial, hello, Barefoot. After that initial panic, that initial surge of cortisol, that initial fight or flight, they were taught how to immediately relax so that that panic doesn't eat you away. We're in a lesser situation these days, but not so far off because we're always on, we're always going, we're always pushing. We're always reactive. I've actually talked about this before, Barefoot Burpee and I, about that fight or flight situation that we catch ourselves in. And we don't realize that we have that third response, which is being responsive. Not always have to fight, not always have to flee. Knowing when we have to do those. It's a biological function. Serves a purpose. When we're being chased by that saber-toothed tiger. But not when we're in a traffic jam. Not when somebody cuts us off, because that's not a life and death situation. Barefoot says, good point, trained response. That's the key to breath work. That's what breath work teaches us to do, that we become more responsive, but knowing we have that option, bypassing fight, flight, and freeze. Um, exactly. We do that through meditation. We do that through breath work. We do that through, hell, we do it through our burpee sets because we're burning off that excess energy and we're just more peaceful. Who doesn't applies to training too? um, it says barefoot. Absolutely. Um, it's always funny. I'll find myself talking just as you type something, and it's like right in line with what we're saying. Bedford said that today he felt tightness during a set and cut the set short, just in case. Which are the things that we learn through training and being older? Barefoot says he could have fought through it, which probably, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that's what I would have done in my 20s, in my teens, maybe even in my early 30s. I would have fought through it. I did it during races, even in my 50s. Um, a race is a little different than training. You know, I put everything on the line to be here for this race, so I might take a little more chances than um, just in training. But for as dangerous as it was at full stretch in a RTO dip, yeah, especially with the rings, one mistake, what, not even a mistake, just one little turn out of the ordinary, and something can give. I knew of a power lifter who was deadlifting some big numbers. I don't remember how much. And at the completion of a lift, he turned his head, heard a noise, just turned his head, and actually pulled the erector muscles along the spine. Buffer says, yeah, I have to really pay attention to sensation, which is so much. That's the key. Vipassana meditation, Buddhist meditation, is feeling a sensation, recognizing it, allowing it, scanning the body, using the attention um, as a source of that larger awareness. It is what it is, says knock on wood. Definitely. Um, it's those little things that we need to be mindful for, especially as we start getting older. At the same time, through a lifetime of training, we're just more aware and we're smart or smarter, as Barefoot demonstrated by cutting his set short. So we get that through training. We get that through burpees. We just become more responsive, but also we become more present towards others, most especially our families and our loved ones. Who doesn't have the experience of going into a session, burpee session, or any kind of workout session in a bad mood, maybe unhappy with someone or some situation, and doing our set, hitting our numbers, coming out of it feeling better, more forgiving, more open, ready to listen, more responsive. As Barefoot says, responsive is a great way to put it in one word. The key to being responsive is just being aware. Reactive, we're not aware. You can see it in really highly trained fighters that their responsiveness is just so out of this world, so highly trained. It seems as it's reactive, but they know exactly what they're doing. Reflexes are just so refined. Barefoot says subtle difference, but it's the next level. It is. Area 106. Hey, my friend, how are you? I hope I pronounced your name wrong. I have a hard time seeing the screen because I'm looking straight and I just see my my reflection staring back at me, and it's a little disconcerting to look and have a conversation with myself that way. I really need to find a way to flip it so it actually appears as if I'm having a conversation with you guys. Thanks for stopping in, Barefoot. I appreciate it. And I appreciate the input in the conversation. Lewis and I had a great conversation 2-3 days ago about some particular football players, some particular boxers, and other athletes. They know. They've trained themselves to be responsive. Unfortunately, quite a few of them also ARES, ours, God of War. Thanks for the for pointing that out to me. I appreciate it. A lot of athletes are unable to take that same sense of awareness that they have on the field and apply it to their own lives. I think every sport and every soldier, it's funny, we train a soldier to be elite, best fighting unit in the world. But we don't train them to come back into the world, come back into society. We put them under this insane stress, and then it's sink or swim. It's a totally different arena. And we think, well, they were there once, so they should be able to return back again easily. It is what it is, says running backs play hurt all the time. Yeah, they do. Not to mention being on the line. So many linemen that I knew constantly breaking their fingers and just working through it. And then later they retire and they have arthritis all through their hands. But again, none of them are trained to come back and not be at war within themselves any longer. To not have that heightened sense. They're trained to, again, be elite warriors. What a shame, excuse me, that we don't have, through the Veterans Service, the means of helping them achieve a sense of peace when they come home. So the Vietnam vet that I was talking about, who wrote that book, Cry of the Panther, his option was to head into the Everglades, study the Florida panther, devote himself to that larger cause. Ours 106 says that brain damage from concussions, I think that was a big problem, if I recall correctly. And absolutely, definitely a big problem. Probably more so with linemen, because they get that micro trauma over and over and over again. If you have a quarterback, how often do they get seriously hit during a season? Maybe a handful of times. If they get hit too often, they're pulled from the game. They give time to recover. But that micro trauma, being on the line, when you just have that constant collision over and over and over again, the entire game, playing through the pain, never getting a break, that adds up. I know of Sports Illustrated several years ago. There was a lineman who was suffering from the results of multiple concussions. He used yoga, meditation, classical music. And he had classical music speakers all through the house. In his garden, he used gardening as well. All of it helped. My thoughts on It Is What It Is, that's my thoughts on raw honey. Mixed feelings about it. As a vegan, honey's supposed to be off the list. About 2 or 3 months ago, when I was suffering some extreme jaw pain due to misaligned jaw, keeping me up, causing some breathing issues, making me absolutely miserable. Um, and I used some raw New Zealand honey. Uh, Supposedly, the company um, does a lot for the life of bees. They give back. So it's actually was supposed to be in service. And I got excellent results from using it. Um, if you don't have the ethical uh, reasons to not use raw honey, which is a fine line, as I know many vegans do, many vegans don't, um, it's actually a wonderful product. It can be a lifesaver for some people who suffer severe allergies because the pollen, especially if it's local, um, you get a bit of that pollen in the raw honey, and it actually works as an antidote for those allergies. It's also a very good antioxidant, a host of health benefits. Um, in Ayurvedic medicine, which is the sister practice of yoga, uh, raw honey is considered one of the 3 essential foods. Um, so definitely up. It's supposed to be very good for the joints as well and aids recovery. I used it before I was 100% vegan in races, in ultra races. Um, Rs106 says, what would you suggest a program for veterans to renegade into society? Meditation, particularly. Now, I practice and teach primordial sound meditation, which is a mantra-based Vedic meditation. But I think specifically for veterans, a mindfulness-based practice, Vipassana, insight meditation, because it's based on what we were talking about with barefoot, noticing the sensations of the body, noticing the sensations of the mind, noticing the thoughts, and learning to be that dispassionate witness so that you don't always have to react to every thought that you have. You don't have to react to every sensation that you have. You just become that capacity. I would also have that with loving kindness meditation, where you learn to extend loving kindness first with yourself, because you can't give anything away until you possess it yourself. So you can't return to a life of loving kindness if you haven't extended it to yourself. And people who have been in war, from my father, from my ex-wife, they have moments where they don't show kindness towards themselves. They don't love themselves. So they have to relearn that what they did in a time of war isn't who they are, it's what they did. And they did it for service of their country. They did it for a noble cause, even if it doesn't seem in some cases that it was. When you're called for duty like that, we don't get to question. You know, the people who went to the Middle East after 9/11, country was under threat. You can make the case right or wrong, but the people who stood up and went did what they did for love of country, for a life of service. So they don't get to second guess. That's for us, for citizens. For them, they get our support. They should. And then we help them come back in society. So meditation, yoga practice so that they can be in touch with their body in a more gentle way. Nature therapy, getting out in nature. That would be the 3 things. Lewis, I remember seeing you eating the honey packets to fuel your workout a week or 2 ago. I used that again during my ultra running, where I would just take in my drop bags, pull out and just take a spoonful of honey, and I would be good to go. When I ran my first 50-mile race, I was 100% fruitarian. All I ate was fruit, and I was always hydrated. I was always fueled. I was always ready to go. And again, in Ayurvedic medicine, um, honey is like a cure-all. It fixes everything. They have it in many dishes, and they use it as medicine, mixing it in tea. I was mixing mine in ginger and turmeric um, tea, and it was really helpful, not just for my jaw, reducing the inflammation, helping me sleep, um, but it actually helped my workouts quite a bit. Uh, Thanks, 50 miles, congrats. Yeah, that was my first. That was back in 2010. Um, I've done at least 20 or 30 50-mile races, um, several 100-mile races. I didn't finish all of them. Um, I have more DNFs, did not finish 100-mile races than I do finishes. Um, Took me a while to finally dial in how to best get through one of those races. Hey, Thomas. Great to see you, my friend. Thomas has been putting in some monster squat sessions lately. Amazing. Rs106 says impressive. I'm pretty tired after 5K. You know what? Some of my hardest races have been 5Ks and 10Ks, half marathons as well. 5K, you're racing. You're going all out. The closest I've been to physically being sick, throwing up, losing it along the side of the road, have been in 5Ks. In my first 24-hour race, I was sick because my fueling was off, and it was just one of those things that things hit me wrong. 5Ks are intense. 100 miles, I'm cruising, I'm walking. I get to an aid station, I drink and I eat. I talk with friends, and then I go out and I do the same thing over again. And I just do it over and over and over again for 24, 25, 26 hours. And then the race is up. 5K is, again, it's just intense. Two things I want to definitely apply to Thomas about his intending to keep them in rotation, which is, I think, key. Everyone needs to squat. I don't squat in my workouts as much as I did just a few months ago because I've been practicing my Qigong wall squat, which has done wonders for some age and sport related back issues. And it just keeps that spine loose and flexible, heals me, as well as opening up the energy centers along the spine, giving me just a constant source of energy through the day. So I'm doing anywhere from, I do it in a grease to groove manner, 4 or 5 times a day. I go by this particular wall and I hit 3 to 5 of those wall squats. So, I get 30 or so squats in. Plus I squat during my yoga practice that I do twice a day. My fastest 5K, I seem to recall in my 30s when I would just do them for fun. I did a sub 20. When I was using them for speed training for my ultras, I was about 21 to, depending on the course, 21 to 23 minutes. Lucky if I pull a 27 minutes in a 5K. Hey, that's respectable. That's a good pace. Again, 5Ks are hard. Learning how to maintain that edge If you go too fast, you burn out. And I see that. I've seen that in races all the time. If you don't go fast enough, then, you know, you feel like you left something there. You got to know how to start, how to maintain, and then have that big finish. The only way you can do that, racing all the time. And that takes a toll on the body. Yeah, but I was young. I'm 58 now. So I always think I've taken some time off of racing, that in my 60s, I'll make a comeback um, after some years of rest and be competitive in my age group. But man, some of those guys, some of those old guys, they can fly. They can definitely fly. Thomas says 5K is like that the whole time, always pushing. Exactly. There's no let up. If you're truly racing, there's no let up in that entire time. I watched on YouTube this morning, it just popped up in my feed, a women's international 800 event. That's another brutal race. Same with the mile. All those middle distances are absolutely brutal. That 800, you're just constant on the go. Crazy. People who are so good at what they do to reach that level are just absolutely amazing to watch, no matter what it is. Thomas says also a big guy, not really the typical 5K build. Yeah, you definitely helps to be built for speed. Rs26 says I'm late 30s. I've seen some guys in the 60s and 70s pass me by. Yeah, in racing terms, that's called you got geezered. That's happened to me in ultra races. My later days of ultra running, I switched to power walking, and I was almost in those long races, almost as fast. I did a 30, it was a 50K, but it was a long course, so it was about 36 miles. This was my last ultra that I did, and I did it in 7 hours and 14 minutes, and I walked the whole thing, and I passed a ton of runners who were really unhappy being passed by a walker. But I was able to maintain the same speed from start to finish all the way through, which I couldn't do as a runner. So if I get back in ultras one day, I'm going to mainly walk all the really long stuff with a little bit of running thrown in to use a different muscle to give everything a little point of recovery throughout the race. Thomas says that he ran cross country because his dad did, and I liked it. But as my wife pointed out, I have the body of a thrower. Funny, when I started ultra running, I was the same. I was probably 20 pounds heavier than I was now. And at my biggest, I was a 220 powerlifter in my 20s and early 30s. Body has been through definite changes for the sports that I've participated in, or the activities that I participated in. Thomas says, have you ever got smoked by a 12-year-old girl in a 10K? I have one particular family. Every member of the family, from the kids to the mother to the father, have beaten me in a race and literally smoked me all the way. Running's their life. All of them were highly competitive in high school and college. The kids are now college graduates, but back then they were middle school and high school. And yeah, all of them in every race from 5K to 10K, they smoked me all the way through. Thomas said, I just said 12 years old and you added girl. Yeah, well, personal experience. It was that family. He has 2 daughters, and they absolutely destroyed me in every single race. My gift is that I appear to be not competitive, but it's only an appearance. Inside, I was burning. I was doing everything I could to beat anyone in that family. I would have been happy beating any single one of them, from the 12-year-old girl to the 40-year-old father. If I could have beaten any one of them, I would have been happy. But again, my gift is that, I look like I was absolutely unconcerned, minding my business, focused. Inside, I was seething, doing my best. I have been too, says Thomas. Um, that was a good thing with powerlifting. I wasn't great at it at all. For me to bench over 300 pounds in competition fashion, paws on my chest, I had to bulk up to 220, with my best competitive bench being 320. It's just not a very good bench. I was middle of the pack, and to push my body weight up to that much, knowing that I was causing some health damage later on, just for a big bench that wasn't that big. It was a big gym bench, but to be competitive in powerlifting, I wasn't good enough. So why put my body through it? Why put my health through it? Running's especially ultras, much healthier sport, because you generally don't, unless you're truly gifted, you're not in it to win anything. You just want to cover that distance. Thomas says, I always pick a person in a dumb hat or a shirt and tell myself, anyone but them, anyone but them. For me, it was the juggler in marathons. Never want to get beat by the juggler. Never want to get beat by the guy in the Elvis costume. You never want to get beat by the guy who's trying to run a marathon in sandals or is wearing dress socks. That was a big thing for me. I'm not going to get beat by this guy wearing dress socks or khaki shorts. Little things. Or with a hydration pack. Hydration packs are vital for ultra running, but not in a 10K, not in a half marathon, not in a marathon, because you got every mile, you got an aid station giving you everything you need. So don't get beaten by the guy with a hydration pack. Thanks, Thomas, for stopping by. I appreciate it. So, yeah, we're talking racing, sports. I was talking yoga earlier. Responsiveness. It's another thing, Lewis says that would be me with the hydration pack. Well, I don't know. You're pretty intense. I think if you train for a race, you'd have everything dialed in. You'd be hitting the race, even your first race, you would be hitting it like you were a pro. Like you knew exactly why you were there, what you were doing, and you would. Now, if you were just going out for fun, that's another story. But if you train for a race, man, the way I see you attack burpees, I think you'd do the same in any race whatsoever, however you decided to do it. Rs106 says, I remember how hard I was kicking one time at the end to pass a guy that was pushing a stroller with a baby in it. Yeah, I've been there as well. It is what this says. I agree, Eric. That was my mentality when I did the half marathon. Well, yeah, you put that effort in your training, and you want to leave your best out there. You want to know. Doesn't matter if you win. Doesn't matter where you place. You want to know that you saw it all the way through with your best effort for that day. And honestly, that was my approach. And for me, that was the only way to do it. because I know I'm at my best in my age group. If all the really good people stay home, I can be in the top 5, maybe, back then when I was training all the time for running. And again, that's if all the really good people stayed home. Um, but the issue for me was, and it wasn't even to set PRs, how good could I be that day? It's the same attitude with my burpees. It's fun to get PRs. They're a great bonus. But as they teach you in Bikram yoga, perform with the body that you have today. You can't compare it to the body that you had yesterday or what might happen tomorrow. When you think about it in that way, every session's a PR because this is the first time today getting 110 Navy SEALs. First time I've ever done 110 Navy SEALs after doing 205 2 days before. You know, my body's still a little beaten up, still a little sore, but you hit the mat anyway. You get your reps. Every day is an accomplishment. And it's a wonderful accomplishment because, damn, you've been given this body, you've been given this time, you've been given this existence. 58, I had no idea I'd be doing this 30 years ago. Some in my drinking heyday, I had no idea I'd be doing anything. Funny thing, when I drank, I never missed a workout. We'd have massive squat sessions with a trash can next to the squat rack because we were hungover, but we got every rep. But I figured that would eventually take a toll on my body, maybe. I had no idea I'd be doing all this. But I wised up. At a younger age, I started training for longevity. And I work out every single day. I have for years. 3 more days, Saturday, will be 600 days of burpees every single day. The same way I do them now. I make no concessions. I get up when it's time to do burpees. I do what I can for that day. Doesn't have to be, again, it doesn't have to be that PR session. I love the Busy Dad program. And I did that for months at a time, every day, alternating Navy SEALs, 6 counts. I love Iron Wolf style sessions, and I did that for a while. For me, at this point now, I like to mix it all up. I like having 2 or 3 Busy Dad style sessions. I like to have sort of an Iron Wolf style session, and then just keep them all in rotation now. Thanks, Lewis, and thanks, Rs106. I appreciate that. It's no big feat, though, when it's what you do. You know what I mean? It's the same. Lewis, when I see you work out, you don't finish your 100 reps or more and pat yourself on the. It's like you're going to work. This is what I do. I do 100 5-pump burpees because this is what I do. But then you get on with your day. You're not getting up and bragging, saying, hey, check this out. Look at me. You got this intense workman-like attitude. Get your reps because that's who I am. No questions. To me, it's like, it's integrity. Living your life with that integrity. In yogic philosophy, there's the 5 yamas, which are the ethical ways of living. And I've applied them to my life for a long time. One of them is very similar to that, where you're committed to something that's almost larger than yourself, which is what those sessions are. It's a form of meditation. It's a form of yoga. Again, I liken everything to yoga. Yoga doesn't have to mean stretching. It's a complete system of life, and it can apply to anything. And it's, if you guys heard of the marathon monks of, I might have to Google the name. It's a mountain in Japan, and the monks, Buddhist monks, run a marathon every single day for years. I believe it is a 10-year training that they do in this monk order. Every single day, they run a marathon in the mountains. When I see you do burpees, that's what I'm seeing. Every single day, you're doing the mountain. You're doing your burpees. It's just how you roll. It's how I try to have my approach. It's no big deal. You just do them. There's got to be some love there. And it's not the emotion of love. It's that deep commitment of love, that capacity to love. The emotion of love, it would be hard to apply it to burpees, because sometimes, pretty often, burpees absolutely suck. That's the one. Thank you, RS106. That's the mountain. True unconditional love means that you love each rep as it comes. The emotion of love, I don't love this rep. That rep absolutely sucked. Took everything out of me. That's the difference between real love, unconditional love, and what we consider love. And when you reach that depth of love, you're open to it all. And you hit that burpee mat and you're ready to suffer. Because suffering's part of life. Buddhism, and it is what it is, says burpee do suck. Yeah, they do. You hit that first rep and you're thinking, well, that's not so bad. You get to 70 something. Someone took a picture of me at mile 40 in my first 100-mile race and posted it on Facebook. And he captioned it, I was smiling, and he said, here's a guy who just ran 40 miles and doesn't look as if he's even started yet. Mile 66, I dropped out of the race. I was completely wrecked. Life can turn on you on the dime. Burpee set can turn on you on the dime. 100-mile race. My first 100-mile race that I finished, and I was 50 years old when I finished it, 3 attempts prior, and I failed each time. I don't want to say fail. I achieved the result. I got better each time. But there was a moment when about mile 60, freezing rain coming down. I couldn't find the long pants that I had packed in my drop bag. Earlier in the race, about mile 40 something, a friend of mine saw me and called my wife at the time and my friends who were waiting for me and said, I think he's going to drop out because he looks like he's hypothermic. And I might have been getting close to it. Somewhere between mile 40 and mile 60, some kind of magic happened. I started feeling better and better and better. The freezing rain coming down started looking like crystals. Everything about the race and the course was just full of mystery, full of magic, that I kept wondering what's going to happen next. And I kept going and going and going. And I knew I was going to finish the race. That's the magic of ultras. But also, that's the magic of life. You just keep going because you don't know what's going to happen next. Rep 40 in a burpee set might be sheer torture. Something clicks. Rep 60, you're just hitting it and hitting it and hitting it and hitting it. And you don't know why. Something takes over. In Zen Buddhism, they call it Satori, instant awakening. And you just get that glimpse into the perfection, into the flow. Just how when we're not caught up mentally, and life just hits it perfect. It doesn't last. It's not supposed to last. That's what makes it so magical. That's why we do the things that we do. Not to achieve those peak experiences, but because we know they're there and that they can happen anytime. I think that's why some of us started drinking, started doing drugs, started doing whatever, because we hit that other level, that more subtle state of consciousness, and then we keep trying to recapture it. But we never do with drugs. We never do with drinking. We never do with excess of anything so it causes damage. Rs 106 says, excuse me, lately in my runs when I'm in pain or exhausted, I try to pretend I'm floating above myself, seeing myself run to distract from the body pain. Yeah, and a lot of times you literally hit that point that the pretending becomes reality. You're there, you're outside that body, and you're just the witness. In yoga and meditation, literally call it the witness state, where you are simply aware of all those thoughts passing, but you're not the thoughts. You're aware of all those body sensations, but you're not the body sensations. You're just aware of everything that's happening until you, at the most subtle level, even the witness disappears. And there's just, in Buddhism, they call it suchness because there's no actual word to describe what it is. All right, guys. So I'm going to end the session for the day. When I started talking, I said I'm going to do my best to hold the talk to 30 minutes unless some friends pop in and I start having a great conversation about life and about training and about all kinds of stuff. And that's what happened with you guys. And I really appreciate it because you made the conversation what it is. You made it worthwhile lasting over 30 minutes. So thanks. I appreciate it. Rs 106, man, I really appreciate you tuning in and having a conversation with me. And Lewis, as always, definitely appreciate you, my friend. You always bring something extra to these conversations, and I appreciate it. So I will see you guys tomorrow for burpees, and then later in the day to talk. Thank you, Rs. Again, I really appreciate it. Take care, guys.